All right, I've got a story for you today that is part thriller, part cautionary tale, and 100% true. It's the story of one trader, one really bad day, and one absolutely catastrophic loss. Okay, let's get right into it. Just imagine for a second waking up to this, a $1 million trading account. This is what it looks like when skill, risk, and, well, what felt like a sure thing, all come together.
And that was the high point, the absolute peak, right as the day was just getting started. But the clock, it was already ticking.
And by the time the day was over, this is what was left. Yeah, not even 0.5% of what he started the morning with.
So you go from $1 million to just over $3,000 in a handful of hours. And look, this wasn't a scam. It wasn't some kind of hack. It was one single trade. So the question we all have is, how on earth does something like this even happen?
Well, to really get how it all fell apart, we've got to look at how it was built up in the first place. And that story starts with a trader. We're just going to call him Marcus. So Marcus wasn't some guy who was born into money. He was 29 years old, completely self-taught, and he started this whole journey with just $12,000, money he had painstakingly saved up from working 3 years of night shifts. And the thing is, he was good at it. He'd managed to grow that initial $12,000 into $200,000. He had proven to himself he could do this, that he'd somehow cracked the code. And that feeling right there, was becoming the real danger. And that's really where the trouble begins. See, that success, it didn't just make him money. It erased his fear and replaced it with pure confidence. So when he thought he saw a sure thing, a guaranteed move on a tech stock that was about to tank, he didn't even blink. He decided to go all in. I mean, really all in.
And how did he make such a huge bet? Well, he used one of the most powerful and frankly, one of the most dangerous tools in the trading world, leverage. So what is leverage? You gotta understand this. In simple terms, it's just trading with borrowed money. Marcus used his $200,000 as collateral, and that allowed his broker to lend him another $800,000. So now he was controlling a $1 million position. That's how his account was showing $1 million.
And this slide right here, it just lays out the risk perfectly. Look, in a normal trade, if the market moves against you by 10% on a $200,000 account, that's a $20,000 loss. It hurts, for sure, but you can probably recover. But with 5 times leverage, that same 10% market move becomes a devastating $100,000 loss. Leverage multiplies everything. The wins, yes, but also the speed and the size of your losses. It really does feel like a superpower, doesn't it? The power to command these huge sums of money, to make these massive returns. But like Marcus was about to find out the hard way, it's a trap. And man, does it have a beautiful entrance. All right, so that brings us to the day itself. Let's actually walk through the timeline hour by hour and see how this dream just completely unraveled into a 9-hour nightmare. So check this out. At 6:48 a.m., bright and early, he puts on the trade, betting the stock will fall. His account value hits $1 million. But then, 8:30, the market opens, and the stock does the exact opposite of what he predicted. It goes up. Fast forward to 10:15, he's already down $180,000. Then, just after noon, the broker calls. It's a margin call, which is basically panic mode. They're demanding more cash to cover his insane losses. Cash he just doesn't have. And then, at 3:47 p.m., it's over. The broker just steps in and forcibly liquidates everything. Game over. So you're probably asking yourself, right, why didn't he just cut his losses? Sell when he was down $40,000 or even $100,000? Well, it's because this little psychological switch just flipped in his head. He wasn't thinking about damage control anymore. The goal completely shifted to, I just need to get back to even. And that, my friends, is a classic trader's trap. It's fueled by this weird quirk in our brains that makes it almost physically painful to admit we were wrong.
So yeah, the financial side of things, that was over in just 9 hours. But the real cost, the human toll, that was just getting started. And this is the part of the story that people almost never talk about.
You know that weird quirk I mentioned? It actually has a name. It's called loss aversion. And get this, psychologically, the pain of losing $1 feels about twice as bad as the pleasure of gaining $1. Think about that. And that is why Marcus couldn't bring himself to hit the sell button. In his head, accepting that loss, making it real, it felt way more painful than the enormous risk of losing it all. And this isn't just some abstract idea, okay? This is actual neuroscience. Scientists have done the studies.
Losing money literally activates the same parts of your brain as physical pain. So that dread, that panic he was feeling, it was a real biological response. And for Marcus, man, the fallout was just devastating. Trading wasn't just something he did, it had become his whole identity. He was so deeply ashamed he couldn't even bring himself to tell his family for 6 weeks. He wasn't sleeping, he kept compulsively checking his phone, staring at this empty account. He even tried to win it back in a panic and ended up losing another $2,000. The financial loss was one thing, but losing his sense of self, that was the real catastrophe. Okay, so after hearing all that, what's the takeaway? How do we make sure we don't end up in the same boat? Well, Marcus's story gives us 4 crystal clear, hard-won rules for survival. Rule number 1, never, ever use a tool like leverage unless you truly, deeply understand how quickly it can wipe you out. 2, always, and I mean always, set a hard stop loss before you even get into the trade. It's your eject button and it takes your emotions completely out of the picture. 3, never trade with money you can't afford to lose. If losing it all would fundamentally change your life, you can't afford to put it on the table. And finally, number 4, you have to learn to watch for the warning signs inside yourself. And here's a big one, a huge warning sign for every single one of us. You find yourself checking your account, more than 3 times a day? Let's be honest, that's not investing anymore. That's gambling. Your brain has switched tracks. After all the dust settled, Marcus had this incredibly powerful moment of clarity. He said, it's so easy to blame the market, right? To say it's rigged, it's unfair. But the real truth, he said, was that he was the one who made the decisions. He took on the risk. He ignored all the warning signs. In his own words, the market didn't take my money. I gave it away. And that really brings this whole thing right back to us, doesn't it? So I'm going to leave you with the same question the source material poses. And I want you to be really honest with yourself here. When was the last time you checked your account more than 3 times in one day? Because at the end of it all, understanding your own psychology, that is the single most important risk management tool you will ever have.